Everybody, we are here today with Lisa Ferentz, who is a very old friend. I can't remember how many years it is now, but more importantly, she is known as a speaker, author, and the founder of the Ferentz Institute, which has been running training programs for psychotherapists. Are they all trauma training programs or
No,
do
there's actually a variety. I have about 18 on the faculty. You're one of my most special faculty members as well. And I really try to pull from, individual expertise. But there's no question trauma is, a big overarching theme for many of the classes. Yeah.
right, 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 because it's the overarching reason why people seek therapy. I
Yes.
also want to definitely mention um, Lisa is the author of what I think of as the very, very, very best book ever written on self-destructive behavior in trauma survivors. It is so good. I recommend it highly, along with her workbook, uh, which which goes with it. You know, we all have had the risk management training on treating self-destructive behavior, but to get at the meaning of self-destructive behavior to clients and all the different ways we can intervene from body oriented to parts oriented. It's just great, great, great books. And you're also the author of Ruby Slippers,
Finding your ruby slippers. Yeah.
Finding Your Ruby Slippers. So, so t- tell us about Finding Your Ruby Slippers.
Yeah.
I'm
So
if I read it.
So yeah, it's inspired actually by The Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy spends the whole movie trying to find her way home, and she thinks that everybody else has the answers, especially the wizard, right? And at the end of the movie, she discovers that she's been wearing the ruby slippers all along, and that everything she needs to sort of find her way home is within her. So I loved that as a metaphor to help people access their wisest, most compassionate part. So the book is a series of positive affirmations and journal prompts that really just guides people to comfortably and safely access that internal wisdom rather than thinking that everybody else has the answers.
Right. So that really means that it's a book for therapists and clients and everybody else
Everybody,
who's,
right. Yeah,
who's neither a therapist nor a client.
that's right. Because we all have that inner wisdom.
That's right. That's so, so, so true. We both agree on that.
Yes. I think we agree on most things, actually.
Right. And that's and that takes us to the story of how we met. In what year?
It's at least 15 years ago, I think, if not more. And you and I are fond of saying that we're grateful that our last names both start with the letter F, right? Because that's what that's what put us next to each other at the network or book signing. I don't know if you know, but I knew, of course, a lot about you before we personally met and admired you from afar, and was beyond thrilled that it just serendipitously worked out that we were seated next to each other. But something happened, right? Within 5 minutes. Well, there were two things. The first is nobody came to sign to get our book
No,
signed. So we
that was
spent.
the most that was the initially most dramatic part.
That's
Is
right.
we're sitting at this long ta banquet table
Yes.
and next to each other with only each other to talk to.
That's right. Thank goodness. Um,
Oh, goodness.
right. But there was, I think, this instant chemistry, right? This instant positive energy. And I don't know if you remember this part of the story, but I had already signed up to do a week with you at Cape Cod Institute. So,
Oh,
so
I
to
don't
that
remember
little,
that.
yeah, so to have that little advanced connection. with
Oh,
you was thrilling. And you were beyond generous, as of course you always are. It just in both in your humility, but also in your willingness to talk very openly and freely about what you know and to share it. And I was just instantly aware of your generosity. And then, so it was kind of love at first sight, I guess.
that's how I felt.
Yeah,
And I felt like we were the only two people who agreed on every topic.
that's right. No, that's
It came
absolutely
up.
true. That's absolutely true. We talked about our belief that you should not be wedded to just one model of psychotherapy, right? We were both, and I think we were kind of outliers a little bit back then, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there was a lot of emphasis on get wedded to one model and that should be all you need. And we were both very much on the same page of thinking, wait a second, no, you have to take an integrative approach. You have to kind of cherry pick the strengths of lots of different models. And again, it was a revelation for me to have somebody like you endorse that and support that. Yeah, I think we were totally and still are on the same page about taking a strengths-based approach to our clients, to not pathologize them, to focus on what's right about them rather than what's wrong with them.
Right. And also not to exclusively focus on traumatic events,
Yes.
because then I think people lose the sense of who they are.
Yeah,
Right? They are the event.
that's it. They're
Yeah,
defined by their trauma.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I honestly think that not everybody was looking at clients in that very trauma-informed way.
Oh,
Yeah. So to have that support and, to be on the same page that just added to, I think, the magic of our connection.
right. Right. And we had a much better conversation than if we had had long lines of books.
That's right. Oh my gosh, I think we were both so grateful that I don't know, we each signed two books and we spent the whole time connecting with each other. It was very special, clearly meant to be. And I we continue to build on our affection for each other, our respect for each other. So I first personally feel incredibly grateful to have you in my life.
Oh, me too. Me too. And I want people to get to know your work because although more and more these days, everybody gives lip service to an integrative approach,
Mm,
but very few people actually can pull it off. And
mm.
you're one of those people. It's so interesting how, and also there is still so much competition
Mm.
between models.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think one of the reasons why it feels very organic and authentic for me to weave in lots of different paradigms and strategies within a 50-minute session. I think in part it's because and I know this might sound strange to your listeners, but I never invested in, spending $8,000, $5,000, $10,000 to learn just one paradigm. And I think, and this is understandable. I think if you do invest a tremendous amount of your time and a lot of money on one model, it kind of makes sense that you're going to get a bit of tunnel vision. You're going to want the investment to pay off. And so I think you might start to then kind of look at every client through the lens of the model that you have profoundly invested in.
Well, and I think it's more than the money and the time.
Mm.
It's that you learn a model and it teaches you to think a certain way.
Yeah, in a monolithic sense.
Right, right.
Yeah. So then, I always say, and again, you have to be of a certain age to even know this reference, but you have to be like Mary Poppins in the original Julie Andrews movie, Mary Poppins. She has, she has this giant carpet bag, and there's this scene in the movie where she pulls out all these pieces of furniture to create this beautiful nursery. And so I always think like, as a therapist, I have to have this carpet bag and I have to be able to pull out, lots of different approaches, lots of different strategies because, I know there is no one size fits all. There is no one paradigm that works for everybody. And you
Right.
don't want to be in a situation clinically where you're, sort of trying to ram a round peg into a square hole. You have to be able to pivot clinically, right? You have to be humble. You have to embrace the fluidity, sort of the gestalt of the moment. And if something isn't working, you got to have nine other things that you can try, I think.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
Or if what you're doing is effective, but the client needs so much more.
Yeah. Yeah. Or trying something and then knowing that another modality could deepen, you know, what they may be getting or benefiting in that moment. Plus, I think it keeps the work interesting and fun for the clinician, right? When I'm sitting with a client and there's a part of me, the creative part thinking about, is this an opportunity to go to Sandtray? Is this a moment where using art therapeutically might be, come in handy? Is there an opening here to do something somatic with the body? So it kind of keeps you on your toes, but I think it also keeps you creative as a clinician.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's something I emphasize even when I'm teaching trainings. So,
Mm.
a big proportion of my work now is teaching TIS trainings,
Yeah. Yeah.
my trauma-informed parts model. And that's what I keep saying to my students is be creative,
Yeah.
right? Even if the treatment you're using has a manual, learn the manual, learn how to do it correctly, and then, as you say, pull pull just the right things out of it and use it creatively. You don't
Yeah.
sign a contract saying, I will only do this model.
Right. So
Yeah.
here's an analogy that I've been talking about. I actually was going to write another book about it. Then I decided I don't know if I want to write any more books. But I think it's very much in keeping with what you just described. I make the distinction between being a baker versus being a cook. So what I say to the folks that I train at my institute is don't be a baker as a clinician because a baker requires a very formulaic, kind of rigid approach, right? You're handed a recipe for a cake. You can't mess with that recipe. If you want the cake to come out, you have to follow it exactly, right? But as a cook, you get a recipe for soup and you can look at that recipe and say, you know what? I'm going to add curry. I'm going to add tomatoes. I'm going to take out the lentils, right? And you'll still wind up with a delicious soup. So it's that same idea. It's concerning to me, and I'm sure you see this with younger clinicians, where there's, I think, out of a place of anxiety, there is this belief that they have to take a kind of formulaic approach to the work
Right.
that they're doing. And like you said, if you got a manual, yeah, that kind of solidifies the formulaic approach. Yeah.
Right. Right. No, and
Cook. Be a cook, not a baker.
I think that's great. I love it. And also I think, which certainly I know both of us would want to avoid, there's a tendency to sort of raise the founders of these methods to a godlike status.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I'm thinking particularly with Dick Schwartz. I have students all the time who raise their hands and say, Dick would disagree with that, as
Mm,
if they're saying God would disagree with that. I'm like, that I say, that's fine. Dick and I have many disagreements and many agreements.
right.
Right? Just because I say something or he says something or Pat Ogden says something doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah. Or does it mean it's going to be applicable with the person sitting across from you?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that is important. And I know you experienced this. You've been around a little bit longer than me, but I've been around 42 years now, so I'm getting up there. Um, there are definitely people, and I think they have nothing but good intentions, but there are, again, younger clinicians who come up to you, come up to me and say, when I grow up, I want to be you. right? I want to be Janina. I want to be the next Janina. I want to do it like you do it. I want to do it like Lisa does it. And again, I know that that's, it's complimentary and it's very well meaning, but it's really, really important for clinicians to not feel like they have to emulate either the founder of a paradigm or somebody in the field who they look up to, that it's really about tapping into your own strengths and listening to your own instincts, bringing your own special, unique creativity to the work. So that can also happen, right, with some of the models that great people who've created these models, but I don't think the goal is for there to be clones of Pat Ogden or Dick Schwartz or anybody else. So it is important that you kind of take these models, cherry pick the strengths, chuck the stuff that doesn't work, because every model also has its limitations.
Okay. Every model has things that don't work,
That's right.
no matter how many times you're told that they will.
That's right. No, no, that's absolutely true. And I think approaching it in that way also can alleviate, anxiety. It can alleviate the beginning clinician's belief that I must be doing it wrong, right? Because it's not landing in the way that I want it to land.
Right.
No, there's some things that just don't work well. So the willingness again to pivot, to be fluid, and to not think that you have to imitate the demos that you saw a famous person do, but that you're really working to make the work your own.
But I think I think you can channel people because I feel that
Yeah.
what I do, I'm channeling a lot of people I learned from.
Sure.
And that's different,
Yes, that's different.
right?
Yes.
When you channel somebody, you know, eventually becomes your own.
Yes. And you can certainly be inspired. You watch somebody who's masterful at doing this work and you learn something that instantly speaks to you. But again, you still want to kind of make it yours, you know. And
Mhm.
that look, that takes years. That takes a lot of experience. That's not something that you master overnight. Um,
Yeah.
and I also think you have to be willing to, in many ways, let the clients be the teachers. I always, after 42 years, I still say I'm the student and my clients are the teachers. Um, if I just help them access their wisdom, they'll figure out what they need to do. And of course, we support and guide and educate critically important, components. But ultimately, it's about helping them. I think it's about helping them access their own inner wisdom.
Right. And it's so interesting. The most frequent question I get from in any
Yeah.
training or presentation is my client can't feel.
Mm.
I can't get my client to feel emotion. I can't get my client to feel the body.
Yeah.
And and it I think because it's so entrenched beginning with our origins in psychodynamic psychotherapy,
Yeah.
that the royal road to healing has to occur via the emotions.
Mm.
And and you know, I'm like, well, if my client can't access emotion, they can't access emotion.
Mm.
We got to do something different.
Yeah.
We can't just keep banging on the
Getting
same
away.
door.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right about that. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. You have to go into this work knowing that there's lots of ways in, right? There's lots of ways to help clients achieve what they're wanting to achieve. And,
Yeah.
I also think it's important to normalize rather than pathologizing the fact that the
Yeah.
client can't feel or the client's not somatically connected. For me, I think it's so important to kind of reframe and normalize that, yeah, it makes sense. This was a predominant coping strategy because obviously in their earliest experiences, it wasn't safe to feel. It wasn't safe to be in their bodies connected to sensation that was invasive or painful or sexualized. So
Yeah.
sometimes just sort of saying that to the client that it totally makes sense that this was a brilliant survival strategy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the ability to not feel emotions when emotions are punishable.
Yeah.
There are really no emotions I can think of that are safe for children in abusive environments.
I think you're so right. One of the most poignant things a client ever said to me was, I got punished the most if I expressed joy.
Ab- Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? Oh gosh, that's so poignant. You know, we think of the more obvious ones like I wasn't allowed to get angry and I wasn't allowed to be sad. But my goodness, to grow up in a family system where the threat to the parent is the child who can be free and playful and feel joy. Um, oh,
Or can feel pride and
yeah.
right.
Yes, good about themselves, confident, right? All those emotions that are so necessary for self-actualization and healthy development. And it all gets put away. Now, I don't think it gets extinguished. So I don't know where you land with that one, but I think it goes underground. I think it gets put away. And I think there are clients who, even though for years and years have not accessed certain emotions, I think when the context is safe enough and they see the benefit, and they're ready, I think it is retrievable. I think it is accessible.
I mean, I think I think of it as what? I mean, we have the capacity for
Mm,
joy and pleasure.
yeah.
We have a capacity for anger, sadness. Um, Heaven knows trauma survivors are very familiar with fear.
Yes.
That's not a problem.
Correct.
And so I think that, I think the body learns when it's safe enough.
Yeah.
And it's not a decision that the client can make. It's, and this is another thing that drives me crazy. Maybe it drives you crazy too, is therapists talking about clients as avoidant.
Oh, yeah. No, that would make me crazy. Or
Because,
resistant. Resistant, another word that is not in my vocabulary. I know it's not in yours. Yeah. Yeah. Again, the pathologizing.
right,
Yeah.
right. As if people are avoidant or resistant on purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say clients who are avoidant on purpose say, I don't want to remember that. I
Hmm.
don't want to talk about that.
Hmm.
So I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's a conscious choice.
Yeah, and they have a right to that choice,
Yes.
which is another thing that I think is really important. That it's not for me to say,
That's right.
right?
Yep.
And most of the time, we resist because we have fear, mistrust. Um, I mean, it's understandable
Yeah.
that trauma survivors resist vulnerability.
Oh, of course. But again, you said to it, we'll circle back to it. It's like the question becomes, what were the dire consequences historically that were associated with vulnerability? There's good reason why. And by the way, rather than using resistant or avoidant, I always use the word protective.
Oh, it's not funny. I always talk about the phobia of vulnerability,
Ah, okay. That's a great way to say it.
which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
kind
But
of the same thing.
yeah, it's about protection.
Yeah,
And it becomes the therapist's responsibility to create a space for that, to honor that, to be curious about why that feels necessary, right?
right,
That degree of protection, because obviously it does feel necessary for the client.
yeah,
The last thing you want to do is steamroll over that as a therapist.
right, right. Absolutely. And and to not honor it
Yeah,
because, you know, even though I always say, the brain made this decision long before you were old enough to
yeah,
have a choice about how you coped. I mean, we have brain development wise, we have to be 10, 11, 12 before we have a brain capable of saying, how shall I cope?
yeah. Yeah,
Prior to that, we cope instinctively.
right. It's so primal, right? It comes from such a primitive place of survival.
Oh,
And
right.
we don't want clients to judge the way in which they had to survive and cope. It's the opposite, right? We celebrate it, we honor it. Now, you know that sometimes a very valuable piece of work in therapy is to help the client disentangle the need to have to engage in that strategy in childhood and then to reassess in adulthood. Do I still need that strategy, right? Do I still need to be emotionally shut down? Do I still need to use dissociation to the degree that I did?
But even if they say, okay, I don't need to be emotionally shut down anymore, that doesn't mean they can access
No, you're
emotion.
right. It's a whole process, a whole journey. Yeah.
It was so cute today. My client Annie, that I talk about all the time,
Yes. Yeah.
she
We all
she
know Annie in one way or
oh,
another. Yeah.
she was talking about this her realization that she must have started dissociating at a very early age, and that she had an ability, this ability to
Yeah.
never feel physical pain, because she could always dissociate.
Yep.
And then she remembered being 15 or 16 and having her first glass of alcohol, some kind of whiskey,
Mm.
and immediately getting a similar effect to the effect of dissociation, and realizing, oh, this is better
Here's
because
another way in.
I have control over it,
Yes. Yeah.
which, dangerous, but
No, but that's such a common story, right? That in early childhood, it's dissociation, and then substances, drugs, alcohol, food, those become sometimes easier ways to achieve the same end, which is, disconnect, numb, self-medicate, not be fully present.
and in some ways they're more sophisticated ways
Yes,
of
agreed.
feeling.
Yeah, agreed. Now, again, the poignant paradox is the thing that is almost a superpower for them and helps them to feel in some way in control and empowered. Um, you know, Definitely adds to their vulnerability towards, subsequent victimization and re-traumatization. And that's the thing that's so hard. The thing that saved you can become the thing that re-traumatizes you.
Well, yeah, when you are old enough to have, I mean, Annie was in an environment in which she could be victimized from birth to age 19.
Mm,
So even though technically, brain development wise, she
mm,
had other options, having dissociated all her life and being in an unsafe environment. Because if you're 19, a 50-year-old man is way more powerful than you are.
of course, of course. So if the context is still unsafe, you
Right,
have to keep using the strategy.
right,
If the
right,
relationship is unsafe, you have to keep using the strategy.
right,
But I'm
right.
curious, Janina, because it's a wonderful insight, for the client to have. Was she able to hold some sense of self-compassion for the fact that this really was necessary?
Oh, that she already had. But
Okay.
what she realized was she had felt ashamed of her teenage drug and alcohol abuse
Mm,
for years. And and the realization was, I don't have to be ashamed of this.
yeah,
Hey, I was a 15-year-old trying to survive an environment full of perpetrators.
yeah. And what you just touched on is exactly my approach when I work with any self-injurious or self-destructive behavior, is really helping the clients make peace with the fact that this was necessary. You didn't have any healthy affect regulation, strategies. Nobody modeled anything healthy for you. You were in an unsafe environment for much of your life. And so it totally makes sense, that that's where you landed and that's what you had to do. Now, is there a part of you that's curious or interested in learning other ways that you can, you know, regulate your emotions and be safe and take care of yourself and genuinely comfort yourself and not land in a place of guilt or shame?
Right. And do you find that some clients have trouble with the language of taking care of themselves?
Oh, every single one of them. I think a better question would be, have you ever come across a trauma survivor who didn't struggle with, there's initially there's nothing about self-care that resonates. I mean, really, it's so counterintuitive on so many levels. It was never modeled, it was never experienced. And when your body is hurt, either physically, sexually, when you're neglected, there's such profound messaging attached to that actually says your body deserves to be hurt. Your body, it doesn't matter what happens to your body. So when that gets solidified for somebody who has that kind of history, and then in therapy you bring up this idea of self-care, they look at you like you have two heads.
Right, right,
Yeah, no, that's a process to get them to a place where it does truly resonate to engage in some beginning behavior that is genuinely comforting and soothing. That's
right.
that's a hard sell, right? I mean, that's not an
Right.
easy sell.
Well, you know how I get around that is I don't tell them what I'm selling. I don't use the term self-care or
Okay.
soothing or comforting.
Okay, no, that's I'm curious about that. So how do you present it?
So usually, how do I present it? Um, well, it helps that I work with a parts model
Yeah.
because I can talk about taking care of the part, although that's triggering too. Just
Mm,
the word take care is,
what?
is trigger it in and of itself. But
Mm.
usually, um, usually I can do it as as a coping strategy.
Okay.
If I
Okay.
say so, the problem is your nervous system.
Yeah.
Your nervous system is so traumatized.
Mhm.
And and this and so when you cut, when you drink, when you
Mhm.
restrict, you're you create a false window of tolerance.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and you fool yourself into thinking, I'm okay, I'm fine.
Yeah.
The only problem is it takes more and more cutting, substance use, restricting, binging and purging to get the same effect.
Yep. And that other piece about inevitably you land in shame, because I think shame really fuels that cycle, you know?
Right.
Mm,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, you're right. That's a hard sell. Sometimes I think though that what we model, like the compassion that we bring,
Yeah.
right? The secure attachment that we bring, the unconditional positive regard that we're bringing, like I think that counts. I think that that gives the client a different point of reference, a different experience, and that can sometimes evoke some curiosity on the part of the client because they know it feels good when, when we're being kind, but you've had the experience, I'm sure, countless times as I have. You compliment a client and they cringe, it's a,
Oh, right.
yeah, same thing. Does not initially land well.
Right. That's triggering.
Yeah, it's hard. You're sort of walking a tightrope in a way.
But the nice thing is I can talk about it. I can say, wow,
Yeah.
I I better be careful not to say anything nice because it's really triggering. And then it's like, could I just tell you a fact?
Oh, I like that.
And they're like, okay, I'll take facts.
I like that. That's a good reframe right there. I like that. Yeah. Listen, you got to be clever as a clinician working with trauma, right? You do.
Absolutely. You have to be sneaky too.
Creative, clever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. You do. Listen, it's also because you are so tuned in, you're so aware of sometimes the nonverbal cues that we get from clients that let us know they just got triggered or, this didn't land well or this is creating angst for them. So it's not just the verbal response you get. Sometimes it's actually paying more attention to the nonverbal responses that you're getting,
Yeah.
and using that as a guide in terms of what are the parameters of, the extent to which I can be complimentary or talk about, self-care. Yeah, clients clients do give us feedback for sure.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I think, I think one of the challenges for us as therapists, because, we're on a mission to
Mm,
help people.
yeah.
And it can feel in those moments that they're triggered by healthy change. They're triggered by self-care. They're triggered by positive feelings that they feel or that get expressed to them. Um,
Yeah.
and, I think it's very easy to feel like the client is getting in the way.
Oh, that's a
As,
powerful way to say
as
it.
opposed to the client is being a trauma survivor. And
Yeah.
our job is to adapt
Yes.
what we do to what the client can do.
That's it. You've just brought the conversation full circle, I think, because it ultimately it cannot be our agenda, whether it's the paradigm that we're using, right? Or the content or the emotion that we are looking at or not. Like it can't be our agenda. It's got to come from the
Right.
client. And we have to, again, I trust their wisdom. I trust the pacing that the client is bringing to the work because the client is the best expert in the client, not me,
Right. Right.
you
Right.
know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even if we were the experts on the client, if what we're offering
Mm,
doesn't work,
yeah.
it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you train younger clinicians, it's important to say, be careful of your own inner critic. Be careful that that you're not beating yourself up or saying, I'm a lousy therapist or just have the grace to recognize that what you're doing in that moment is not landing for the client. It doesn't mean you're a bad therapist, and it doesn't mean the client's being uncooperative. You're just getting valuable information in that
Right.
moment, right? About where they can go and maybe where they can't go yet. And as
Right.
long as you can be respectful of that and allow the agenda to always be the client's, then the work can unfold. Otherwise, there's the potential for power struggles and countertransference and, all kinds of other stuff that gets in the way.
Right. And I feel like we can't avoid countertransference because just like, you
Or
know, we can't avoid having feelings about the people who check out our groceries. Right? You know,
it's
I,
true, actually.
I mean, we're gonna have feelings about other people. It's just how do we manage them? How do we understand them? Are we conscious of them?
Yeah, that's key. That's key. So you're bringing up another dynamic that is I think is so critical in therapy, and that's what I refer to as dual awareness.
Right.
Right? And you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to hold an awareness of what's happening for the client and a simultaneous awareness of what's happening for you as
Right.
the clinician. Um,
Right.
I always say, I know that you will appreciate this, that somebody has to be grounded and present at all times in a therapy session. And it has to be the therapist because it's often not the client.
Right. At least we have to be willing to be
You have to
grounded
try.
present just in case. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And we have to make it okay for therapists to say, I wasn't as grounded and present,
Yeah.
right? Because not only is there the fear that they're doing something wrong,
Mm.
but I think it's also that we're not invited to talk about what we did wrong. I mean, not what we did wrong, but what didn't work.
What didn't work or the missteps. I mean, those are real moments in therapy. Just like the beautiful epiphanous moments are real. There, there's plenty of moments where, I wish I could rewind that moment in time, right? And like you, and I know you do this, and I do this as well when we teach, I think it's just as important to share anecdotes about, things that did not work, both to normalize, there is no perfect therapy because there's no perfect anything, and to turn those experiences into teachable moments,
Right.
right? To have that humility to say, here's what happened. In hindsight, there could have been a whole other approach that would have gone a whole lot better. Um, And I'm going to learn from that because it's probably not going to be the last time I'll be confronted with that moment and that dynamic, whether it's with the same client or certainly with a different client. So that humility
Absolutely.
is so important, and to not have the expectation that you know everything and that every session is going to, I always joke, I have sessions where if Blue Cross were videotaping the session, what I'm thinking in my head is they would not reimburse for this visit, right? Because either it looks like nothing is really happening, or what's happening is, not what I wanted to have happen or the client wanted. Um, and again, you just have to be humble that that's
Yeah.
real, that's part of relationship, right?
Right, and that's the nature of psychotherapy.
Yeah, yeah.
Lisa, I could talk to you all day.
Well, I know this is the problem. We could go on and on, and I know
This is
we,
what happened, by the way, at the networker, everybody, in
that's right.
2010.
Our one time
We
a year where,
kept talking.
yeah, the one time a year we actually get to be together and have a meal together or several meals together.
Uh,
Yeah, and I look forward to that every March.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. This has just been so much fun.
Yep. Thank you. Be well.
Be well, you too. Bye.